Or you're getting ready to put in an offer on a home and you need to know what the heck is earnest money? What is this hand money thing you talk about? So hand money is whenever you put in an offer to purchase a residential home, it is money that goes along with the purchase, a check. And it says to the seller, hey, I am serious about purchasing your home. There's a bunch of good questions. One of them is it refundable? Now, you're going to stick around to the end of the video to get that answer, but I have a list of other questions, and I've taken polls and on social media and asked people what questions they had about social media. And I'm going to go into them right now. Okay. First question is it part of the down payment? It is not part of the down payment. The down payment is totally separate. Whether you're putting 20% down, 5% down, etc. It is different from that. Next question, is it part of the closing cost? Yes, it is part of your closing cost. So let's just use round numbers, for instance. Let's say you're going to pay cash. Let's just get the lender out of there. They just add a bunch of drama, we'll call it real estate drama, potentially cause a lot of real estate drama. So if you're buying a house for $100,000, right? Let's just say there's no other closing costs and you put down $2,000 hand money. When you go to closing, again, there are other costs, but we're going to assume there are no other costs. You would have to put down, you'd have to bring a check for $98,000 because the $2,000 is a credit. So let's go over some of those answers again. Is it part of the down payment? No. What if you have cash? Is it part of closing costs? Yes. Okay, so those are the first two questions I want to bang out. Next, oh, this is a good one. Again, I just take this for granted, and I bet you my fellow realtors too as well. Do I have to have the cash in the account when I write the check? What kind of check is it? When does it get cashed? Those are separate questions, but I'm going to lump them all together. So some states may accept Bitcoin and other type of stuff, but we do not. It has to be a check. It has to be a check. For years, we've been accepting personal checks. So whenever you write out your offer, back in the day, before DocuSign and technology, we used to collect the check when you wrote the offer. We would hold on to it in our little manila folder until it got accepted. So once the offer gets accepted, you would then have to have the funds in your checking account to be pulled out. So when does it get cashed? I just told you it gets cashed whenever, like a day or two or immediately after the contract gets fully executed and delivered. Fully executed and delivered. The definition of that is the sellers sign it, the buyers sign it, delivered to both parties. Everybody acknowledges they have it. That is fully executed, delivered. The hand money then must go into the buyer's broker's account. Or if the listing agent says the listing brokerage must hold it, this is sometimes in foreclosures, the bank, which will be the seller in a foreclosure, requires that the listing broker holds it, but that'll be spelled out in default. By default, it's the buyer's broker. If it is spelled out in the offer, the listing, then the listing brokerage would hold it. And sometimes even the escrow account or the closing company would hold it, which I think is the cleanest, but we never seem to do that. So you would need to have the money as soon as the contract is fully executed and delivered in your bank account. The check will go into whichever of the three I just said, and it'll sit there until the day of closing. All right, so that's going to answer questions. Is it refundable? I'm sorry, refundable, you got to wait to the end. That's what I'm going to talk about. Is it refundable? Is it part of the down payment? Is it part of the closing cost? When does it get cashed? Oh, another good one. Is hand money required? It's going to blow a lot of people's minds. Hand money is not required. Not required at all. There's no law. There's nothing that says you have to have hand money. Now, of course, every seller and listing agent that's worth anything is going to say you have to have hand money. But I have written, so I know a lot of people like to do for sale by owner. As a buyer's agent, I love when they go for sale by owner because they don't know the contract. They want to save that 2.5%, 3%, or 3.5%. Well, if you don't know the contract, I am going to do everything legally in my power and ethically to make sure my seller, who I represent, even though I end up all by default a dual agent not getting paid for it and helping the seller with the paperwork, my seller is going to get the best representation legally and ethically, and I'm going to put a 0 in there for that hand money. I've gotten away with that a lot of times with my buyers. Why put any money at risk? So you do not have to have hand money at all. Next question is, how much is hand money? That was a good question. I forget who wrote that in. There's no rule. The way I work it as a buyer's agent and a listing agent is I want 1% of the purchase price. That's right, using round numbers, $1,000. $100,000 purchase, $1,000 hand money. Now, in some luxury deals, some listing agents require a much higher number, and even the buyer's agents require a much higher number in luxury. And I'm sure it varies across the world. And if you're in a multiple offer situation, that amount of hand money is going to change too. A lot of times, if the buyer wants to be the winning bid, they'll go a lot higher. So there is no rule, there is no standard, there is no protocol. It's agent specific, and I like 1%. Really, it's really tough to lose your hand money, which I'm going to get into as well. All right. Okay, yeah, how much is it? When, where does it get deposited? I already answered. And this is a good one. This seems totally simple, and that is, where does the hand money come from? It comes from you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. It comes from you or your mommy, your daddy, whoever. But the hand money comes from the buyer side of the transaction. Okay. Last question, is it refundable? Is the hand money refundable? So, great question. I'm glad you stuck around to the end. Is it refundable? Absolutely. Sure. So nowadays, again, I'm going to reverse just a little bit. With technology, I no longer collect hand money from my buyer at the time we write the offer because we're not in the same airspace. With DocuSign, there's a host of other digital signature type products out there. We're just not in the same airspace. I mean, that's why a lot more deals happen. We used to have to get together and write it up on paper, and I remember whenever we used to be able to just have them come in, sign everything, explain it, and then scan it in. Scanning it in was a big deal. Now we don't even meet them. So if we're not meeting them to get everything signed, it's all done with DocuSign or .loop. You're out there to get a check. So I have my buyers snail mail me the check to the office. I always ask for 10 days. The default in the contract in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is 5 days. So I always ask for 10 days because I don't ever want to go outside. I don't want to not get the check in time because my license as a buyer's agent, a lot of people don't know that, is at stake. So I always ask for 10 days because the post office isn't always the quickest. So that's another one, another question that wasn't even asked, that was answered, time frame. If we can handwrite in any amount of time we want, the listing agent has to accept that, the seller has to accept that. So is it refundable? That's one of those contingencies, yes, are built into the contract. Mortgage contingency, home inspection, home sale contingency. I mean, there's a litany of contingencies in there. And if you, as a buyer, terminate and cite within those time frames, reading over the HOA documentation, whatever, within those time frames, you will get to retain your hand money. No harm, no foul. You will lose out on any appraisal money because that's services rendered. The appraiser did his job, delivered the product. Home inspection, you don't get refunded on that. So you can be out $1,000 out of the gate if you terminate the transaction. So that's something to think about if you want to terminate. Sometimes I've seen buyers bicker over like the smallest little thing on a home inspection. I'm thinking to myself, that's $100, $200, $500 problem, and you're about to lose $1,000, you're going to terminate due to your appraisal, which already happened, and your home inspections. So that's something to think about. Now, if all your inspection contingency timeframes have passed, and this has happened, every scenario has happened in real estate. Let's just say you're a week before closing, inspection contingency is done, HOA contingency is done, you got your mortgage commitment. I mean, you're ready to go, and another house comes on the market that you like better. I've had this happen. And you decide I have to have that other house. You will terminate, but that seller will keep the hand money. They will split it with the listing agent. Again, my listing contracts is 50-50. So if it's $5,000 hand money and that happens, $2,500 goes to the seller, $2,500 goes to the listing brokerage. So you would lose your hand money, and rightfully so, because that seller has already packed up everything, expecting you to close, and you just flake out, bail out, whatever. That's why a lot of times my sellers and I will watch the contingency time frames click off. I have reminders set, and every time one clicks off, I know we're more secure or safe to start packing things up. And as we get closer to the closing deadline, We know we're 99% chance of closing. So hope you enjoyed this video about earnest and hand money. I think I answered all the questions. If you have any more questions, put them in the box below. DM me, email, smoke signals, whatever.